it's being recorded. Hi everyone. Today we will have a recording of the demo for role strategy performance improvements and the new folder authorization plugin. It's the middle of the second coding phase. Abhyudaya Sharma on the call is a GSoC student working on the project. Abhyudaya, could you please briefly introduce yourself and then we could proceed with the presentation?
Hi everyone. I'm Abhyudaya, and I'm working on improving the performance of the role strategy plugin in this Google Summer of Code program. So I'm going to share what I've done in the second phase. I'll just share my screen.
Okay. Yeah, it's working.
Yeah. Hi. So today we are going to discuss about the performance improvements that I've made to role strategy plugin and about the new folder authorization plugin that works on folders from the Cloud-based folder plugin. So let's first start with the improvements to role strategy plugin. So we've done a couple of things which have led to some improvements in the performance. The first thing is before role strategy plugin 2.12, for every permission checking request that it got, it used to match all the regular expressions that were there for the roles. Now, what we do is we cache the collection of rules. Internally in the role strategy plugin, this is called a role map. And all of these match the given regular expression. So if you give a folder, let's say called foo, and all the regular expressions from the roles which match the word foo are in this role map. Now we have a cache for this, and the cache gets invalidated whenever a new role is added. This has given us significant improvements in performance. However, this is a trade-off between CPU time and memory. We keep all of the pre-computed calculations in the memory. We use the JMH benchmarks, which were created during the previous phase. And we saw improvements of up to 3,300% in getting these matching role maps. Now, another thing that we've done is we cache the implying permissions. So Jenkins permission model follows a tree-like structure. So each permission can be implied by other permissions. For example, if a permission to read a job is implied by the administrator permission, so the administrator implicitly has the access to read any job. So role strategy plugin used to calculate each of these implying permissions every time for a permission check in the same way that it was calculating the matching roles. And now we store these implying permissions whenever the class is loaded. So, and we store them. A big challenge we had here was handling dangerous permissions. Certain permissions in Jenkins are considered dangerous. For example, the run scripts permission, which allows non-administrator users to configure Jenkins. Basically, they could do anything that they wanted. So role strategy plugin supports them as an option for backward compatibility. And this option is disabled by default. So whenever dangerous permissions were either enabled or disabled, the cache for the implying permissions needed to be changed, because when the permissions are disabled, they are deferred to the Jenkins administer permissions. So we added a hook for whenever this mode changes, and we invalidate the entries for dangerous permissions. Now let's discuss about how we measured the performance improvements. We use the JMH benchmarks created during the previous phase of GSoC, like I told before, and all of these benchmark reports were generated during the pull request builds. The results were obtained as JSON files, which were visualized using JMH Visualizer. I also verified the improvements in performance by running on my own machine and running profiling. Now, so the improvements we can see here, we had multiple benchmarks, and so we can see improvements of up to 10,000% in the time taken. So an operation that earlier took 100,000 microseconds now just takes 1,000 microseconds. This is a best case scenario. The real life performance improvements may vary a little, but it has been verified that there has been actual improvement um, to the performance of the plugin. Now, to Now we have another plugin which was created during this phase. That's the folder authorization plugin, which was created to avoid the problems that role strategy plugin had. First, we removed using regular expressions because they were being a big bottleneck for the performance. And it also frees us from having backward compatibility. Role strategy plugin, I guess, is 6 or 7 years old. So it had to cope up with a lot of things that were there earlier. For example, the new plugin does not support dangerous permissions by default. And just like role strategy, it supports global roles, folder roles, and agent roles. Global roles are just like role strategy plugin, and they're applicable everywhere within Jenkins. Folder roles, which is what is the namesake of this plugin, work on cloud-based folders, and they can be assigned to multiple users. So each folder role can give permissions to the users. The permissions granted through a folder role, that is to a folder assigned to the folder role, are inherited to all the children of the folder. Agent role allow configuring permissions for agents connected to Jenkins. We have REST API methods for adding and assigning roles. And finally, we have Jenkins configuration as code support. So this is what a sample YAML configuration for the plugin looks like. So you can have agent roles. You can have multiple agent roles. That's an array of agent roles. And similarly, you have multiple folder roles and multiple global roles. Now, let's go for a quick demo. So here we have our administrator account, and we can go to Manage Jenkins and then Folder Authorization Strategy. So now this is the screen for adding a global role. Now let's just add one role here. Let's say anything. And we give the global role, let's say um, let's give the job wipeout permission, and we click add role. The role was added, and you can see the role being added here. And now you can assign the SID, the SID of the group or of the user. So Jenkins provides two predefined groups, that are the authenticated and the anonymous groups, which are there by default. Other groups are there from the authorization, from the authentication that's currently running. So we can assign a SID, let's say user2, and we submit it. So we can just see that the seat gets assigned to the role. Similarly, we have folder roles. We can choose multiple folders to apply a role here. And again, we can choose the permissions. Similarly, we have agent roles. So now let's see how this plugin works. So user one has been assigned the the delete permission for the agent test 2. So if we go to user one's account, and we go to test 2, you can see the user has the delete permissions. But if we go to if we go to test 1, the user does not have permissions. Similarly, I'll show you a demo for folders. So there are 3 folders here, right? And Let's just take a look at global roles first. We give the we give the overall read permission to every authenticated user here. And then for user one, we give permission to read the root one folder and to build the projects in root one slash child. So that's the child folder that's inside of the root folder. Now let's go back to user one and sign in. So as you can see, first the root 2 and root 3 are not authorized. This user is not authorized to access root 2 and root 3. And when we go inside, you do not need to specify the permissions independently for the child items. Let's go to job 1. The user does not have the build permissions here. But if we go to child, the user was given this build permission through um, a folder role, and we go to this one, and you can just build the folder as user one. Finally, I'd like to show the configuration as code working here. So if we go to configuration as code, you can just view the configuration. Now, some challenges that I faced during this phase. The first was to find an efficient authorization method for these roles. Uh, this took a lot of time and thinking for me to come up with. And as a benefit, global role permission checks now happen in constant time. That is big O of 1. Uh, Another thing that I wasted a full day on was trying to get JavaScript's JSON.stringify to work. So what was happening was prototype.js from Jenkins code changed array prototype to JSON, and it was giving some garbage values, and we were not being able to exchange the data with the Jenkins server. And finally, there were some issues with configuration as code not supporting sets. There are two pull requests there. One of them is still a work in progress. Now, the next steps would be to improve, would be to give more improvements to role strategy plugin and improve the UI of the folder authorization plugin. This was the first alpha release of the plugin, so there's a lot to be done here. And then we have to write the documentation for it and the 1.0 release for the plugin. Um, Finally, I like to thank my great mentors Oleg, Runje, and Supun. And please do share your feedback and comments to me through either the role strategy plugin Git chat or through Jenkins developer mailing list. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. I put some comments to the meeting notes document about what could be changed, but yeah, I think it's a great introduction. And we should definitely share it with the community. Yeah, so yeah, it's really nice to see the progress. And yeah, I think that in next weeks we can have a wider presentation. So one will be definitely as a part of GSoC phase 2 evaluations. And if you want, we can also use one of special interest groups to do a presentation. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't think about this earlier because yeah, we had a platform special interest group meeting yesterday. So maybe it could have been a venue for that, but yeah, if not, we still can use the developer mailing list or whatever to get additional feedback. I think it's already a good start. Okay. So thanks a lot for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so I would suggest to stop the broadcast now and yep, to just have a regular meeting discussion. Or if you want, we can keep recording so that others can see that. Whatever you prefer.
Whatever you prefer.
Okay, let's keep recording. If needed, we can just cut it later.
Okay.
Yeah. So just a second, let me share my screen. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I put a few comments to the meeting notes. Yeah, basically, yeah, I'll just polish the document a bit. But yeah, I think it was a really good presentation, and we have a lot of time to improve it. But even in the current state, it would be perfectly fine for the evaluation. Okay, so we have a few other topics to discuss. I guess one of the topics would be to just review pending pull requests to see where we could help. And did you want to discuss anything else?
The UI perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for UI UX, I believe there is a special mailing list for Jenkins. Your mailing list. I believe there was a list for UX, or maybe it was a list for Blue Ocean. Just a second. I believe there was a mailing list. Doesn't make that I remember of it. Oh yeah, Jenkins UX. So I'm not sure how active is it. Well, basically they will only, yeah, there was only one message this year. Because yeah, it was basically all around Blue Ocean, but yeah, it looks like there are not that many activities in Blue Ocean at the moment. But maybe it makes sense to send a message and, for example, just send your presentation to this channel. And yeah, as I said before, it also makes sense to send it to the Jenkins developer mailing list. So by sending information to these two mailing lists, hopefully there will be some feedback about how it will be improved. And we already have some discussions ongoing about, for example, JavaScript modularization and PyCharm and Jenkins, and they also work on UX related stuff at the moment. So maybe they could also collaborate with you to make some improvements. And I guess on my side, it makes sense to do another round of testing this weekend, right? Are we there?
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah. Yeah, I'll just add an action item for me. So I tried the plugin on Monday. Basically, it worked well for me feature-wise. Yeah, UI could be improved a bit, but yeah, I think that now the best way is to just create Jira issues, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I will try to test it, and if I hit something, I will just report the tickets. And yeah, I guess for the pending stories, yeah, there are 4 pending pull requests. So we can also see what we can do about them. Okay, sorry if I got sidetracked for UI UX. But yeah, would these items help? Or could we do something else about UI UX?
Yeah, this will help.
Yeah, right. And probably one of the notes is avoid using cold plugins because yeah, for our strategy, we already had a discussion about that. But at some point I included the jQuery UI plugin and apparently it was a terrible idea. So now finally there is a contributor, Rick Palmer, who wants to clean it up. So yeah, hopefully we will integrate it for all strategy. But if you depend on external plugins in Folder Auth, yeah, better use new ones. For example, one which was referenced there for jQuery detached. Basically, it's already installed on pretty much every instance of Jenkins. So yeah, it should be safe enough to use it. So, yeah, it also doesn't seem to be that new. Actually, a good question. What's going on there? Yeah, the plugin there, but it doesn't look to be really active nowadays. Probably just does the job. Okay.
Yeah.
So regarding pull requests, so I guess what we need is a review of these pull requests. Do you have anything else pending where you need help from mentors?
Pull request number 3.
You mean yeah, here, right? Oh yeah,
The
this
last one.
one.
Yeah.
So this one, there was ongoing discussion between you and Jesse. Yeah, and basically Jesse sees that the code is too complicated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically what Jesse says is that configurations should be simple. In our case, we have an issue in a role strategy plugin, and likely we have an issue here as well that we access data often, and hence it's not enough to use standard collections in some cases, especially when it comes to concurrency. So here you basically split configuration and the internal cache which we used for performance, right?
Yeah. When it's serialized, it uses a hash map. When it's not being serialized, it's a concurrent hash map.
Okay.
This comment, I don't think he understood what was going on.
Yeah, right. It's also my impression. So you can just comment there, but yeah. This you don't say for immutable classes. Yeah, that's also a fair point. But basically, it's what we were hitting before in the discussions that if we have Jenkins configuration as code and other things, we would rather make the top level object immutable if it's possible. I'm not sure whether it's, yeah.
The fields are immutable, but they can be modified. For example, the sets.
Okay. So yeah, maybe yeah, it's a fair point. So here, Jesse basically concerned about creating a new object, and he suggests just modifying the existing one and returning this. Basically, what's written here. So he basically what it says is just moving this constructed logic, which is already private. So instead of that, just do initialization here. So here in read resolve, you can safely initialize this collection. And basically, you get the same result as if you were doing new constructor, right?
The roles, I mean the global roles and the folder roles are final, if it makes any sense. So would it be fine if I make it if I make them non-final?
As long as they're private, it's perfectly fine. So
Okay.
fine, yeah. Final here, firstly, is just quality of life thing. I mean, it's self-protection, so you cannot make a mistake while doing any kinds of creation. But it's still not a silver bullet because, yeah, even if they're final, these collections are modifiable. And basically, occasional modification of these collections is a much bigger problem than creation of a new instance. So here, I see no problem if you make them non-final, just to resolve this command, because yeah, it's a valid point. And yeah, I think you could address that.
Okay.
And speaking of that, do we have any round-trip tests for configurations? I mean, a test which just saves the configuration, then loads it, and ensures that everything is fine. Oh yeah.
There's
Yeah.
one test. It loads in a configuration YAML and then it verifies it.
Okay, but yeah, it uses fixed imports, right? So it's not. Yeah, it's basically a test for sure. Maybe it also makes sense to have a round-trip test in addition to that. So basically, when you construct an object, then save it, then load it, and ensure that everything is fine. So here you just emulate loading, but not the round trip. Is it correct? Yeah, it's just.
Is that for configuration as code or the extreme serialization?
Maybe actually both. So for example, what you could do, you could pass configuration from configuration as code, then load it. For example, using configuration as code rule. Then you process this object, save it manually to the disk, load it, and see that the object was intact. So you can do this round trip if it saves your time. So basically, I meant
Okay.
scenarios without configuration as code, but yeah, you can combine them if you want. And we have some round trip tests in Jenkins, but I'm not sure whether it applies to permission strategies. So here, for example, a round trip for the unit archiver address. Yeah, so maybe it's something you could just see whether it works for you. Because yeah, what it basically does, it actually round trips the serializable object. Or maybe not. Yeah, likely it says it's only for a step, but you could do something like that. So yeah, this method definitely won't work for your keys. And do you need me to make any notes about the implementation? Well, basically, if I should just comment in the pull request. Okay, something like that.
There's this test.
Okay, so it's configuration as code, but basically this test emulates loading of configuration. It's definitely cool to have it, but again, it's not round-trip test. So what is my proposal is to ensure that you save the data and then you load the data and everything is correct.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this test is definitely helpful, just not for this type of issues. Yep. It's nice to have these tests, and thanks for doing them. Okay. So yeah, I think this pull request, we can land it relatively soon. So we just need to address this constructor command, and if you had some test automation. So Jesse didn't block this pull request. Just to translate what Jesse means there, he doesn't like the implementation, but he doesn't block it. So it means that once you're fine with that, we can basically integrate that. Though it would be nice to get final feedback from Jesse.
Okay. Then we could also merge the agent roles one, right? We could make changes according to whatever happens here.
Yeah, does the agent roles depends on that pull request?
The serialization does.
All right. Okay, then yeah, we can wait with that. Yeah, I think that this pull request can be quickly merged once we integrate the one above. So this one is relatively simple. And yeah, you all set REST APIs in parallel. This is good. So one thing for REST APIs, sometimes it's better to start documenting them right away. So for example, here, when you add this pull request, you can also add documentation for, well, right now we just have no documentation here. But basically what would be a good approach is when you add a feature, you just patch documentation in parallel. So for example, if you had a page for REST API there, then in pull request, you could have just added agent REST APIs. And yeah, it could help you a lot because yeah, basically you create documentation on the flight, spend less time, and then yeah, then you don't need to recover all the context to write the documentation.
Yeah, we actually use these REST API from the UI.
Yeah, but it's also available to users, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so if it's available to users, it's better to document that. So role strategy is probably not the best example of that because role strategy has kind of separate REST API calls for internal stuff and for user stuff. But yeah, here, since you have clean implementation, I think it's fine to just integrate that.
Okay.
So yeah, and for documentation, basically, if you prefer Markdown, you can just write it right in the GitHub. Sometimes it saves time, though yeah, you can do the same in IDE. One thing is when you consider creating big pages, maybe it makes sense to consider ASCII-doc because the main benefit of ASCII-doc is that you can use some macros. For example, here I use table of contents, which is not accessible to Markdown. So if you consider creating big documentation pages, maybe it makes sense to think about using ASCII-doc. And yeah, as additional benefit, when you use ASCII-doc, you can easily move the content, for example, to your blog post. So it's something to keep in mind when you start writing the documentation. Basically, it's your choice what you like. You can use both. I should probably note it somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Something like that. And yeah, I'll paste the link to the example because apparently it's not trivial to get table of contents even in ASCII doc when you use GitHub. So it's easier for code generation, but yeah, for GitHub it requires some tweaks. Okay. So apart from these pull requests, is there anything else I can help you with?
There's one pull request in configuration as code.
Oh, yeah, configuration as code. Pull requests. Yeah, this one, right?
Yeah.
So the pull request for sets has been already released, I believe. Yeah, we had a discussion on, yeah, so it's integrated. And for the pending pull request, yeah, basically we need community feedback to make a decision whether we integrate it, right?
Yeah. And I wanted to discuss whether the nullability, these annotations like parameters were non-null by default, they can get overridden when we use nullable or similar annotations. Do I consider all those cases and have an implementation that checks everything like an IDE does? Or is this fine for now?
I think that it's fine for now because basically all kinds of this of such patches are best effort thing anyway. Because you update the plugin in order to implement guessing of particular use cases. So here, before that, we were just checking whether it has non-null annotation. But again, even that might be a problem because there are dozens of non-null annotations. So it's just find bugs libraries, it's spot bugs libraries, it's GSR libraries. Also, if you use IntelliJ IDE, you can use JetBrains annotation libraries, etc. And this one just does one particular case. So it's not a silver bullet on its own, but yeah, you just do a best effort. So here you improved the situation because you added some additional annotations which were not present before. Maybe it actually was a separate changelog entry. So for example, for this one, because you change your behavior for all users outside the use case of your release, you may deserve separate changelog entry. Yeah. This is not related to collections. Okay. Yeah, I'm just adding comments here. But yeah, I think that what you did here is a good improvement. And if you want to improve it more, why not? But if you find with the current implementation, I suggest you keep it as is because you definitely improve the situation. It may also make sense to add some test notation, some test automation for these cases. But yeah, it's up to you.
There was also a comment from Joseph. He was talking about JSR 305.
Okay, so he wonders whether we could support that. Does it fall under GSoC? Okay, so yeah, here it might make sense to use to support spot box annotations, but maybe it's a separate change. So yes, indeed, it makes sense to consider that. Again, it's improvement, but it's not improvement strictly related to what you do, because you just used the same annotation as before. And then, for example, it's possible to create a follow-up pull request.
Okay.
A separate improvement. Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it's just yeah, maybe a good solution there would be to just create a follow-up GitHub issue for that. Yeah. Yeah, so here I think that it's fine as is. So I'm happy to approve that. But this discussion we can continue it in the background, and maybe if you're interested, you could submit a separate pull request for that. I'm not sure which annotation you prefer to use in your plugin, but yeah, some people start migrating to Spotback annotations because there are some license concerns about JavaX annotations. So it might make sense, though, yeah, maybe not immediate goal.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that even these parameters are known now by default could have been done in a separate pull request. But yeah, you improve the situation and you address the keys for your plugin, so why not? Um, mm, okay, so done. Okay, so let's see what Tim and Joseph say, because yeah, for me, it's actually not a bug fix. I would say that it's actually improvement. Mm. Mhm. Okay. Are there any other pending pull requests you would like to review?
I think that's it for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a question to you about the pull request to Jenkins test harness. Jenkins test harness. So do you want to work on that in this phase? No, it's perfectly fine. I was just wondering whether you would be interested to integrate it.
I think this could be useful, but from our tests,
Mm-hmm.
what has happened was the web client benchmarks, they almost remain the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our benchmarks may be wrong or something about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I would say that
I,
if you don't
it
have,
could be that the methods they work asynchronously, so they give the same result every time. I'll have to investigate that.
Mhm. Would you prefer to do it during this coding phase, or would you prefer to postpone it to the next coding phase? So both options are fine with me.
I think we could take a look in the next coding phase.
Mm-hmm.
I would first like to get done with
Mm-hmm.
the serialization part and writing some documentation for folder
Okay.
authorization.
So basically, after full authorization, I want to zero.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So even if we don't get to this pull request in coding phase 3, it's not a big deal because, well, it happens here and there. So we can just mark this pull request as stale and then yeah, take a look again later eventually, or maybe somebody else picks it up. So if you don't get to that, it happens. No worries about that. Okay. Anything else for today?
Um, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. So one thing. Okay. So I will be likely off on August 2nd. So yeah, it's in 2 weeks, but yeah, most likely I won't be able to attend the meeting at the time. So depending on the status, yeah, I think that we can safely skip one meeting at this point because yeah, everything is fine. But yeah, I'll talk to Supun, to Runja if they become active, or if we find somebody else to work on the UX part. We still can keep this meeting. But yeah, maybe I will be off.
Yeah, I'd also like to tell about my college opening in August. So,
Okay.
I might not be able to work full time because I'll have classes during the day. But I could work during the evenings and the weekend.
Mm-hmm. You mean the entire coding phase 3, right?
Not the entire coding phase 3. I guess it would be in August. Yeah, so that would make it the coding phase 3.
Uh, yeah. So do you mean the placement, which is common for Indian students?
No, that's not placement. My classes would start in August.
Oh, just classes.
I had mentioned, yeah,
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. So what is the approximate day when they start?
I think it would be around August. I guess the first Monday of August. That,
Yeah, so it would August 5th.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine.
I'll confirm the date. I'll just confirm the
Mm-hmm.
date. Let you know.
Okay. Yeah, so what it means that we will need to adjust the meetings, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's something we can do. It's not a problem at all. Yeah, so maybe doing for that. Yeah, basically, coding phase 3 can be pretty much relaxed if needed. So you already did great progress. So if you have classes, we can adjust the expectation in terms of how much you work because yeah, we still want to have you to have weekends and we don't want GSoC to impact your study. So we can adjust and yeah, probably be more relaxed during this phase. Mhm. But yeah, basically, it would be nice to have a doodle so that we coordinate the rest of the things.
I think we can have a doodle sometime later because my class timings I
Okay.
think won't be decided until 25th of July.
Okay. Okay. That's perfectly reasonable. So we have enough time. Okay. So yeah, then basically it means that we can just have the discussion on July 26th. It's in 1 week. But yeah, it's a regular meeting, so we can just discuss it in 1 week.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Well, thank you too. So yeah, then I'll stop the broadcast, and yeah, you can just take a look at the recording. If you want, we publish it as is. If you want, we can just cut the demo part, or if you prefer, we just don't publish anything. So it's your decision. You just tell me what option you prefer, and I will implement it.
Okay,
Okay. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, if you
thanks.
publish it, thanks to whomever was watching the recording. Yeah. See you later.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.